Another thing that McConnell acknowledged today when he was announcing that he was stepping down is that he's out of step with the majority of the Republican Party on national security, with his views on that. How would you define what the foreign policy view of the Republican Party is today?
I think there are different, avenues of perspective on that. And my own view is that, and I do believe that the majority of our caucus, of the Republican senators, believes that we should play an active role in the world and that we should defend freedom in places where it's under attack. I think, for instance, if Taiwan were attacked, you'd see the great majority of the Republican senators say we need to help Taiwan. I want to give it weapons so it can defend itself. I believe that if there's a plain vote just to give weapons to Ukraine, the Republican senators will support that. Some were unhappy with support for the government of Ukraine, didn't want to vote for the Ukraine funding on that basis. But I think the majority of our group feels that we are better off in America if we defend the cause of freedom around the world. Otherwise, bad people, terrible authoritarians like Vladimir Putin are going to ultimately attack NATO nations, and we're going to be required by treaty to send our own soldiers into harm's way. Or we can walk away from NATO and blow up an alliance which has helped preserve global peace at least among the major powers for the last 75 or 80 years.
I was just in Ukraine, sitting down with President Zelensky. They are deeply worried that your colleagues in the House, Republicans in the House, aren't going to send them any more aid, that they are going to stand in the way. What responsibility do you believe Republicans will bear for setbacks on the battlefield for Ukraine if they don't pass any more aid?
Well, if we don't pass aid for Ukraine, then I think Ukraine has a very difficult time preserving their geographic integrity and life. You're going to have a lot of people who lose their life as Russia runs across Ukraine. And that will make it very clear to people around the world that you really can't trust America's word, because we made a commitment in 1994 to respect the sovereignty of Ukraine, to help defend the people of Ukraine if they were attacked. And that's what's happening. And if we walk away from that, they won't trust our word. Europe will say, hey, the United States is not with us. We're not going to be with them if there's something they want to do in the Pacific, for instance. Let them deal with China. Let America deal with China and the issues there. So we're strong globally, in part because of our friends. We have alliances. We always talk about how the Russians and the Chinese don't have the kinds of friends we have. Well, we have friends in part because we stand together. And if we don't stand with our friends, we will lose strength, and that will ultimately come to hurt us.
So you disagree with your colleague, Senator J.D. Vance, who is making the argument that $60 billion more won't fundamentally change Ukraine's stance on the battlefield.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. It just happens to be as accurate as it is irrelevant. All right, it may not change their stance on the battlefield. What it does do is communicate to the entire world that we honor our commitments, and we stand with our friends, and we will help freedom fighters around the world who are our friends and allies. And that's a message which is important to the people in Taiwan, to the people in Japan, to the people in India, to the people in Europe. All these people are watching to see, can you count on America? Or is America so isolationist, it doesn't care what happens to the rest of us? If that's the case, by the way, if we cede leadership, if we're no longer the leader of the free world, if we're no longer the arsenal of democracy, then the world is going to look for different leaders. And I know at least one player that's happy to step into that role, and that's China. And a world where Xi Jinping is the leader of the world is a very dangerous world, and not good for America, not good for our businesses, for our economy, but certainly not good for our freedom.
It's also pretty amazing to hear you just put it in this simple perspective that if House Republicans block more money to Ukraine, lives will be lost in Ukraine as a result of that.
There's no question about that. Lives will be lost there, and Vladimir Putin will not stop. He may take some time to rebuild his military because it's been decimated by the ill-considered attack on Ukraine, but he will ultimately go after other nations in the Baltics, Latvia, Lithuania, potentially Poland. Those are possibilities. Georgia. He will continue. He has indicated he wants to rebuild the Russian Empire, if you will, and those are NATO nations. We're obligated under treaty to come to their defense. We are. It would be penny wise and pound foolish to say we're not going to help Ukraine with weapons when the next step is a place where under treaty we would be obligated to help with not just weapons and funds, but blood. And we need to make sure that the world knows we will stand with Ukraine. I can't guarantee, as J.D. Vance indicates, that this is going to mean that Ukraine is successful on the battlefield. But I can guarantee it shows the world that we'll stand by our friends.
Do you agree with President Zelensky's analysis that Trump doesn't really understand Putin because he's never fought him?
I don't know that I can enter into the mind of Donald Trump and understand his perspectives. I think he shows more respect for Vladimir Putin than Vladimir Putin deserves. Donald Trump has said some strange things like, well, okay, Putin has killed some people, but our president's killed people too. It's like, yeah, but our presidents don't kill their political opponents and members of the media, all right? Our presidents may take us to war to protect our freedom and our interests as we understand them. That's very different than murdering political opponents and murdering members of the media and incarcerating journalists. These are the things Vladimir Putin does, and attacking a sovereign nation, Ukraine, without provocation and killing tens of thousands of people, kidnapping children. This is a very bad guy. Based upon our values, and I think the values that are shared by people throughout the world. And I think it's fine for a president and a former president to talk to leaders of other nations, but be clear-eyed. Vladimir Putin is a very bad person.
Nikki Haley, who is challenging Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, is in your home state today campaigning. She's gotten a lot of support from other top Republicans in your state, but her argument and what she told your constituents today is that if Trump's the Republican nominee, your party is going to lose the election. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. That's a good campaign line, I'm sure. But
so you think he could win?
Oh, sure, I think he can win. I mean, today it's kind of a toss-up, but if the election were actually held today, I think he'd probably win. I can't tell what's going to happen over the next 9 months or so, but...
what does it mean if he does win?
Well, a dramatic change in our foreign policy. I think the people around the world say, okay, America is no longer the leader of the free world and the arsenal of democracy. It's not the shining city on a hill. It's now an isolated island. There's some things, by the way, Donald Trump does better than Joe Biden, a lot. Joe Biden has made extraordinary mistakes on the immigration front. It's embarrassing how bad he's been.
Yeah, I know you care deeply about the border, and
so he's made it terrible. And Donald Trump did a lot of smart things when he was president. On the foreign policy front, it would be a dramatic departure from our posture over the last 75 or 80 years. That, by the way, has not only kept us safe and free from attack, but has also allowed us to build an extraordinarily strong economy and have a income per person in America about a third higher than people in Europe.
But can I just ask? I think that those comments there may raise some questions for people watching at home. Would you vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden? No, absolutely not. I mean, for me, there are two factors in deciding who I want to have as the leader of my country and the person who is the example of the president for my kids and my grandkids. One is their position and policies. And on foreign policy, I'm not aligned with Donald Trump, at least as I understand his policy. On domestic policy, yeah, I align with many of his domestic policies. But there's another dimension besides policy, and that's character. And I think what America is as a nation, what has allowed us to be the most powerful nation on earth and the leader of the earth, is the character of the people who have been our leaders, past presidents, but also mothers, fathers, church leaders, university presidents, and so forth. Having a president who is so defaulted of character would have an enormous impact on the character of America. And for me, that's the primary consideration. Senator Mitt Romney, thank you for coming on The Source tonight.
Thanks, Caitlin.
If it makes you feel any better, I have already put evac on alert. He's ready to go if it comes to that. General, I can assure you.
Hey, General, let me into the war room to see you, so I had to hack my way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Willie.
Sir, come on, what is it now, please? Okay, couple of things. I'm running low on the dough. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And, oh yeah. I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I was so damn good on me, let us know.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
The Megatron.
This was just a diversion. Security, please bring him up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
decent statement back. They appear to be after the All-Star.